To say that I was excited for the Galaxy Z Fold 6 would be an understatement. I'm a sucker for tech, especially things like these folding phones. But after spending the last week with the Fold 6, did it live up to my expectations, or is it a waste of money, plain and simple? In this video, I'm gonna walk you through my experience using the Fold and share my honest and unfiltered opinion about this $1,900 device. Yes, $1,900 for an awkward phone that opens up into a tablet-like experience with a couple of caveats. So I think I want to start off with some positives right out of the gate. The Fold 6 is now shipping with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 for Galaxy, and even though we're halfway through this SoC's life cycle, it's definitely the best you're going to get in the Android realm right now. There's a new flat, boxy design, which does improve the symmetry and look of the device in my opinion, and it also gives the inner display a squared off look, giving you some more screen real estate. The cover display is now also 1mm wider, which might not seem like a lot, but it has made a positive impact on the overall usability and the typing experience. And there's also some AI stuff which we will get to. But for $1,900, there are some concerns. How will this phone hold up over time? Is the concern of durability on the Fold worth it since you're getting all of these extra features? And what's changed to make this device more expensive than the Z Fold 5? Before we find out more though, a like and a sub to the channel is always appreciated. I just want to say thank you so much for the support. We're almost at 40,000 subscribers, which is amazing, and it really does mean a lot. Speaking of the durability though, this video is brought to you by Spigen. Through the last couple of years, you've most likely seen a handful of Spigen cases featured on this channel, and that's because I believe Spigen is simply the best for all of your accessory needs. Whether you're looking at protecting your Z Fold 6 with a case, screen protector, or even a camera lens protector, Spigen has you covered with a handful of options to choose from. For example, the Slim Armor Pro, which is a hard shell protective case complete with hinge protection and shock absorbing foam, giving you peace of mind and a comfortable in-hand feel without making the Z Fold feel hefty. The Ultra Hybrid Pro is a sleek case that offers solid protection and still allows you to see your flashy new device underneath its crystal clear coating. And my favorite, the Ultra Hybrid Pro 01, gives your device a unique look, showcasing some of the more interesting internals with a modern yet retro feel. These cases not only provide great protection and impact and drop resistance in areas that matter, like the camera housing, but they also offer a raised bump near the bottom of the device, which prevents the phone from rocking on a flat surface. Their Glass.TR Easy Fit is a tempered glass screen protector for the cover display, which comes with a really helpful tool for perfect installation every time, and the Easy Fit Optic protects those expensive camera modules while still remaining a low profile and not impacting the look and feel of the Fold 6. For all of your smartphone needs, go ahead and check out Spigen using the link in the description. Thank you again, Spigen, for sponsoring this video. So the main reason you're going to want to buy this device is for that large inner display. And there's no denying that the Fold has this cool factor attached to it. You're always carrying around a tablet, which is great, and now so more than ever with this refresh. The Fold 6 is about 14 grams lighter than the Fold 5, weighing in at only 239 grams. That's a pretty big cut considering it's now 2 grams lighter than last year's 14 Pro Max. So when all is said and done, the Fold is now on par with a slab style smartphone, at least in terms of the weight. It's also now just a touch more thin at 5.6mm from 6.1, and while I don't have the Fold 5 on me, I did notice this change immediately, though I don't think that it's something that's going to impact how you're using the device in any meaningful way. You also have to remember that this is the thickness when unfolded, which happens to just be 0.5mm thicker than my M4 iPad Pro, just to put that into perspective. And I know these are two completely different devices and I'm not comparing them, but it is kind of insane when you think about it. Don't let the numbers twist you though. This device in your pocket is going to sit at nearly 12mm thick, and despite the cut to its weight, it still does feel hefty. The trade-off though is the display, for sure, because what you're getting is a 7.6-inch 120Hz HDR10 Plus capable inner screen with up to 2600 nits in peak brightness when viewing HDR content. It's stunning. For the size, it has a very respectable 374 pixels per inch, so everything appears to be very crisp, and it's enjoyable to consume media on or get lost in business tasks or whatever people do with these devices. Also, just to briefly mention, the inner display does now have the same specs as the outer display, except the outer display is 6.3 inches with a higher 410 ppi, but we'll get back to that. Anyways, there's a lot to like about having a mini tablet in your pocket. You always have a large screen for content or games, and emails and tasks like spreadsheets are much easier to handle, and if you're a power user, you're gonna love the ability to do split view multitasking. And like I mentioned earlier, the new squared off design of the Fold 6 makes the inner display stand out, especially with its 91% screen to body ratio. My only issue with the inner display is the crease. We're 6 iterations in, and while it does look a tad bit better, it's still very noticeable. And if you're using the phone in a well-lit environment or outdoors a lot, you're gonna be fighting reflections or rushing to the shade just to get it out of your view. Granted, I used to be fine with the crease on the Fold 5 and I didn't really think much of it. I almost forgot about it completely when using that phone, and this is still somewhat true with the Fold 6, but after seeing the OnePlus Open, OnePlus's first foldable launch with virtually no crease, it makes me wonder what Samsung is doing and ultimately where my money is going. Now, another area in which Samsung upset me with this launch is the lack of the anti-reflective coating, and that's on both the inner and the outer display. This on the S24 Ultra was a game changer, and it could have had a huge impact on the inner display to at least mitigate the crease's appearance when in bright conditions. It's not all bad news though. Like I mentioned earlier, the cover display is now wider. That was one of the biggest point of contentions with the previous versions of this phone. Now that the phone's also got a tad shorter, it's more akin to a 21:9 aspect ratio, making two-handed typing a lot more comfortable, and it does somewhat help to eliminate that TV remote feeling this phone had before. It also does, in my opinion, look a lot nicer than the Fold 5s, especially since it's a lot more symmetrical. There's no giant hinge poking out, and the display has the same corners and bends along all of the edges, ultimately making it look kind of like a skinnier S24 Ultra. The cover display is where you will find yourself a lot, especially when out of the house and running around, and these changes did help to ensure that the experience is much better, at least for me. I didn't have a huge complaint about the Z Fold 5's narrow display, but it being a little bit wider has made a huge impact on how I actually use this phone. And although you're buying this phone for its inner display, it's a good peace of mind knowing that the Fold's cover display has been made less awkward to use, allowing it to fit more easily into your everyday life. Now, quick rapid fire of a couple of things. Unfortunately, the Fold 6 supports Wi-Fi 6E with no Wi-Fi 7. It may not be a big deal to some of you, but it does suck, seeing as this is Samsung's highest end device. There is Bluetooth 5.3 and USB-C with the 3.2 standard, and of course the Fold 6 does not have an SD card slot or a headphone jack, and the size of the battery is the same as the previous Fold, being only 4,400 milliamp hours. The Fold 6 also only supports up to 25 watt wired and 15 watt wireless charging, so if you're someone who's typically on the go a lot, investing in a portable battery bank is a safer alternative than waiting for this thing to charge, because spoiler alert, it charges very slow. There's also 3 models of the Fold 6, a 256 gig, 512 gig, and a 1 terabyte variant. All come with 12 gigs of RAM. All also use UFS 4.0 storage, which is nice to see. And the starting price, like I mentioned, is $1,900 US. However, if you happen to live in a country, say like Canada, where I am, the Fold starts at about 2,565 Canadian dollars, pushing its way up to the $3,000 mark after taxes. There are some ways I think that the Fold is worth this price to some people. The cameras, however, are just one area that honestly don't cut it for me as a daily driver. This is what front-facing video on the Z Fold 6 looks like using the cover display camera. So that's the 10 megapixel camera, and this is shooting at 4K. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. I feel like for video it doesn't really handle highlights that well, and it blows a lot of things out, and the contrast looks a little weird, but I don't know. I guess you guys could be the better judge of that. And so this is the rear camera. I'm using the cover display right now to actually see what I'm recording, which is one really cool feature of the Z Fold series and the Flip. But I'm actually recording in 4K 30, like I said, on the rear camera, and I think that it looks a lot better. It does seem to handle the highlights a little bit better. The colors look a little bit better. It looks a lot sharper, obviously, because it is that rear-facing camera. So I think when it comes to video, if you're going to be using the rear cameras, at least make sure that you're using the cover display to see what you're doing so you have that preview. But because you can do this, I feel like it kind of removes the whole need to use that front-facing camera on the cover display. So I don't know. I think that camera looking kind of junk aside, at least you have this option and it looks a whole lot better. Now this is the inner display camera. I actually feel like we don't even really need to talk about this one. For video, it's not going to do a great job. For photos, it's not going to do a great job. It's just there if you need to do like a video call or a quick meeting or something on the Fold. You can only record in full HD. You can't even do UHD, so there's no 4K on this front-facing camera, and that's that inner display camera that's hidden behind that pixel group, so it does have this weird effect to the image that I'm not really a big fan of. So I'm editing right now, and those videos look like ass. I don't really know how else to put it. I don't really know what else to say. They look terrible. That was recorded on the Fold in the highest quality available for those cameras. The inner display selfie camera is only HD, but each of them have blown out highlights, really bad contrast, and the actual main shooter, the one that I said was the best, looked the best on the preview, but watching it back on this video, it is barely even focused on my face. I don't know if there's a minimum focus distance that's greater than that area. I don't know if I'd have to hold it out to here, but it doesn't look good. I am actually blown away by how bad that was. Those also weren't offloaded to Google Photos or anything. I didn't download them. They weren't compressed. That was straight off of the phone, and I used a USB-C cable to transfer it. What happened? Where this does become upsetting to me though, is for that $1,900, we're getting the exact same camera hardware that the Z Fold 5 had, with the only upgrade being a larger sensor for the ultra-wide for better low light performance. The ultra-wide just so happens to be pretty much the only camera on this device that I don't care about, and the rest of this camera layout just seems to be pretty uninspiring. Don't get me wrong, the 50 megapixel main shooter is decent, and you can get some pretty solid images, but with the lack of a meaningful telephoto with only a 3x optical lens, it's not a very flexible setup. And at just 10 megapixels, these images start to show their age when stacked up against other devices like the iPhone 15 Pro Max or S24 Ultra. It's just that I feel like this is kind of a slap in the face. Like, hey Samsung, here's $3,000, give me last year's camera hardware. What? But it's not just cameras like I mentioned. The battery, the charging speed, and the lack of things like Wi-Fi 7 or their impressive anti-reflective coating, they're just not here. There are also leaks pointing toward a new Z Fold coming in October, the Z Fold Ultra, but I am unaware of whether this device will be a global launch, and if it is, it'll be really upsetting to find out just months after this device is already launched. Without getting too upset though, and diving down this rabbit hole of Samsung seemingly giving up what makes them interesting, their innovation in shoehorning AI down our throats, there are a bunch of things that I really do enjoy about the Fold 6, and there's a lot of reasons why I keep coming back to these phones. For example, the fingerprint scanner. Don't get me wrong, the ultrasonic under-display fingerprint reader on something like the S24 Ultra is fantastic, but I'd much rather the way the Fold does it. It's integrated into the power button so that I'm easily able to unlock and enter the phone without thinking about my finger or thumb placement. The cell reception and call qualities of these Samsung devices are fantastic, and on the Fold, it's no exception. Calls sound great, I'm able to hear whoever else is on the line very clearly, and there's even some noise reduction done on the Fold's end to reduce loud noises for whoever is on the other side. Like my dog Ellie always gets really excited when she hears my wife on speakerphone, and she starts going crazy with her squeak toys. This is something that I unfortunately have to hear blasting right in my ear, but my wife doesn't while she's on her drive home, and while I'm not benefiting from it, that is nice. The speakers on the Fold 6 have also been much improved. I actually think they sound a lot better. They're a lot more clear, there's a lot more detail, and the low end seems to sound quite a bit better. When it comes to watching media on this phone, I often don't even use my headphones because I found that it actually does give me a pretty enjoyable experience. And battery life, even given the fact that this phone is driving a large display, it's fantastic. And I will have some more information with screen on time in a later review, but I'm giving this phone some time to settle first, especially since it's still learning my usage patterns. However, it does get me through the entire day with my usage, and that's about 75% of the time spent on the inner screen. So it's quite good. And entertainment on the Fold is also always a joy. Playing games like Diablo Immortal is just a surreal experience because I'm getting solid performance, great visuals, and comfort, and I'm able to get lost in the game because of how large this screen is. And that whole split view multitasking thing that I brought up earlier is something that I do actually use. Hear me out. I know multitasking isn't really a thing and you can only do one thing at a time realistically, but being able to reference a contract whilst responding to an email is convenient for me. Throwing up Threads and X to see what's going on with tech at the moment is pretty neat, and having messages up whilst mid-conversation while doing something completely different is really nice to have. It's also made much easier with the taskbar, being able to drag and drop an application either beside or on top of the pop-out window actually makes using these features a breeze. And although I do wish Samsung one day take a page from OnePlus's book with open canvas, because honestly that is the easiest and most useful way that I've seen multitasking done on a foldable, until then, split view does work well. Another underrated feature is the ability to open the fold at about a 90-degree angle to be able to watch YouTube videos when it's propped up on your nightside table in bed. You also still do retain the controls on the lower half of the display, and it's things like these that make using this phone a lot different than a regular slab style phone, and it opens up a ton of different possibilities. And you can also set up your device like this and use it as a tripod to record yourself or take a group photo, which could easily be done by simply just waving your hand. The thing is though, is that these are features that the Fold has been able to do for quite some time. And I was hoping for an integrated S Pen this time around to hopefully spice things up, but instead, Samsung has decided to jump headfirst into this AI gimmick that everyone else is doing. New to the Fold 6 is the interpreter mode, making live translations and conversations easier. Admittedly, this is really cool. There's also Live Translate, which can translate phone calls in real time directly on the device. And the biggest thing is now having Gemini over Google Assistant, which is opt-in and not by default. But Gemini is cool because you're essentially using something like ChatGPT as your assistant rather than Google Assistant. And this was a huge deal for Apple with their Apple Intelligence announcement, and I do really enjoy it here on the Fold. Though things like Portrait Studio, I don't get it. I mean, I get that these things can be fun, but is this phone really targeted at these kinds of consumers? And for these to be some of the biggest selling points of the Fold 6, it's very worrisome that Samsung is just focused on the wrong thing. I wanted a bird, not an airplane, but it's pretty cool. To be fair, I do really enjoy voice memo transcriptions because I often record sections of these videos as they come to mind on my phone, and it's nice to be able to reference the text rather than listen to an entire recording. But a lot of these features are either already not exclusive to the Fold 6 or in time will be on other Samsung devices. So to say Fold 6 with AI or Galaxy AI is here, I don't understand it. Okay, now lately it seems like we've been pessimistic about tech that's been released, and I don't want my experience with this device to sway you from purchasing something that actually might be a really useful tool for you or a lot of fun to mess around with. And I'll be the first to admit that despite some of the Fold's shortcomings, it'll be staying in my pocket for a little while at least, because I do personally find value in having a foldable. I work in social media, I consume a lot of content. It's nice to have a large display on the go to play back footage I've shot, to check focus on my camera, and it's a solid and comfortable size to use as an e-reader, and it's perfect for long trips and car rides when I'm packing light. But I have to ask myself, is the portability of the Fold 6 worth the price disparity? And is it worth the extra hassle over carrying just a regular smartphone? As someone who daily drives a 13-inch M4 iPad Pro, I don't actually need another tablet in my life. Though I have noticed that since using the Fold and having it in my pocket, the amount of times that I've reached for my iPad has lessened over time. Surprisingly though, for the price that I paid for the Z Fold 6, I could buy this M4 iPad Pro and a used S23 or S24 Ultra and still get relatively the exact same experience. All of what I just talked about over the last 20 minutes telling you about the Fold 6 is what makes this device incredibly fun and also extremely frustrating. And it's also becoming even more increasingly difficult to recommend. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you want to buy a Fold, and me telling you what I think about it realistically doesn't change or sway your purchasing decision. And that's because you've already put a lot of work into researching whether it's the right device for you. And if that's for you, you don't need another person to tell you what to do. Just go buy this thing already. But if you're on the fence and coming from a slab phone and thinking that the Fold 6 might be right for you, consider the Fold 5, or even the OnePlus Open, especially considering both can be found with some ridiculously insane deals right now. You also aren't really missing much except for the design on the Fold 6. So anyways, that's been it. If you found this video at least somewhat insightful or helpful in any way, a like and a sub to the channel is always appreciated. And like I said, thank you so much for your support. And if you have anything that you want to complain about to me, let's have a discussion about it in the comments down below, because I'm open to hearing all of your sides, and hopefully it'll help me form a better review for my long-term review in about a month. Like always though, if you're a real one and if you watched the entire video, drop a star emoji for Galaxy AI, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.